All right, so today we're diving into a text with a pretty amazing title, The Rhinitis Monk and the Horse-Faced Elder Monk. Now, I know it sounds like some kind of ancient fable, but it's actually a really sharp look at the common and sometimes kind of dangerous technical mistakes people can make in their meditation practice.
So let's just start with a really provocative question. Could your meditation actually be doing more harm than good? I know, it sounds crazy, right? We think of meditation as this purely positive thing. But what if the way you're doing it is subtly messing with your health or, just completely blocking your progress? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into.
And this is the key idea right here. The text makes it super clear. Spiritual practice is a technical skill. It's not just about having good intentions. Think about it. It's like learning to play the guitar or swing a golf club. If your technique is off, you're not just going to sound bad or miss the ball, you can actually injure yourself. Same principle applies here.
Okay, so let's jump into our first case study. Picture this, you're in a Zen hall, and you see a few monks who, despite being super dedicated, just look unwell. They're pale, little skinny, maybe even bloated. You'd have to wonder, what is going on here?
So you see the symptoms, right? Pale, skinny, bloated. Your mind might jump to all sorts of complex health problems. But the actual cause? It's almost shockingly simple. It turns out they were meditating right after eating. So here's the chain reaction, the actual mechanics of what's happening. First, you eat a meal, then you immediately go sit. As you start that deep meditative breathing, your diaphragm pushes down, and it literally squishes your full stomach. Your stomach can't contract, it can't do its job of digesting, and if you do that over and over, you end up with poor nutrition, weakness. Your body gets weaker from your practice, not stronger.
Okay, so that was digestion. Now let's move on to our next case. This one's about a monk who's got chronic rhinitis, basically a constantly running nose, and joint pain. Now, most people would just write that off as, oh, he just catches colds easily.
But again, that common diagnosis is just wrong. I mean, think about it. If someone's been meditating for 6 or 7 years, shouldn't they be getting healthier? Something deeper is going on. The problem isn't a virus, it's the air he's breathing, or more importantly, how he's breathing it.
Now, to really get this, we have to think about something completely different for a second. Deep sea divers. You've probably heard of the bends or decompression sickness. It's when gases form tiny, painful bubbles in a diver's blood if they come up to the surface too fast. Well, believe it or not, a very similar thing can happen to you when you're sitting perfectly still on a meditation cushion.
So here's the breakdown. The monk is breathing in really deeply, but then he's holding his breath for too long without fully exhaling. That pressure actually forces nitrogen, which, makes up most of the air we breathe, out of the lungs and into the bloodstream. And that dissolved nitrogen forms tiny bubbles. Where do they go? Well, they get stuck in places like your joints, causing pain, and in the tiny capillaries in your nose and ears, causing that runny nose and even ringing in the ears. It's crazy. A simple breathing mistake creates all these problems.
And that brings us to our third and, honestly, most subtle case. We have this elder monk. He looks the part, He's been practicing for decades, looks very serene and advanced. But if you look closer, you notice his face is kind of long and drawn. Horse face, the text calls it, and he's missing some teeth. That tells a totally different story. The whole mystery of his problem boils down to this one number, 40 seconds. That's the critical amount of time a single breath cycle, in and out, needs to take for you to shift into a deeper state of meditation called the second jhana. And despite all his years of practice, this monk never, ever crosses that line. So, why?
And the flaw is so simple, it's kind of heartbreaking. He's using a beginner's technique long after he's outgrown it. See, in the early days, focusing on the dantian, that energy center below the navel, is fantastic. It helps open up the body's energy channels. But once those channels are already open, continuing to focus there with that same intensity, well, it actually starts to do damage.
And you can see this devastating chain reaction right here. That constant focus creates tension in the dantian. That tension starts pulling on the abs. The abs then pull the sternum down. As a reaction, the collarbone gets pulled up. This stiffens the neck muscles, which finally pull the jawbone down slowly over years, creating that horse face look. It's a cascade of tension, all from one misplaced point of focus.
And the long-term effects of this are really severe. The body gets more and more stiff. Blood vessels constrict, which means less blood flow to the brain, which actually makes the mind duller. Body temperature can drop, and that constant downward pull on the jaw, it causes the gums to recede until eventually the teeth just fall out. A practice that was supposed to lead to enlightenment is leading to physical decay.
So, the problems seem obvious now, right? You just walk up to these monks and tell them what they're doing wrong. Easy peasy. Well, not so fast, because the biggest obstacle here isn't a lack of knowledge, it's pride.
This quote from the text just nails it. It's a common flaw, especially for people who've been practicing a long time. They can get so confident in what they're doing that they just refuse to listen. If you try to give them direct advice, they just dismiss you.
So the teacher in the story had to get clever. He came up with what's called the toilet teaching method. No, I'm not kidding. He would literally go into a toilet stall next to the monk who had the problem and have a loud conversation with his own student describing the exact issue and its solution. The monk would overhear this secret teaching, and because his pride wasn't threatened, he could actually take the advice. It's brilliant!
So all of these stories, the bad digestion, the weird breathing, the wrong focus, they all point to one big unifying idea. Real spiritual practice isn't about forcing your mind or your body into submission. It's about finding a state of what you might call mindful physiological harmony.
So for our elder monk, the correction was to totally shift his focus. He had to stop concentrating on a physical spot like the dantian and instead move to an advanced practice called investigating doubt. Now, that sounds pretty abstract, so what on earth does it actually mean?
Well, in simple terms, it means you stop micromanaging your body. Instead of trying to force energy to one little spot, you start working directly with your core consciousness itself, what the text calls the yang spirit. When you do that, you allow the body's natural wisdom to take over, and your energy and blood start to circulate perfectly on their own. It's like becoming the conductor of an orchestra instead of trying to play every instrument yourself.
And this, right here, is the ultimate lesson. True, deep cultivation is never a battle between your mind and your body. It's an intricate dance. And to be a good dancer, you have to know the steps. Understanding the technical, physiological side of things is every bit as important as the mindfulness you'd bring to the practice.
So let's just do a super quick recap. The digestive case. The flaw was wrong timing. The principle? You got to respect your body's natural cycles. The breathing case? The flaw was wrong technique. The lesson? Understand your own physiology. And the focus case? The flaw was the wrong target. The lesson there is huge. You have to be willing to adapt your method as you grow.
So what are the big things to take away from all this? First, please remember spiritual practice is a technical skill. Treat it that way. Second, listen to your body. Those physical symptoms aren't random. They're valuable data. Third, and this can be a tough one, be willing to let go of methods that don't serve you anymore, even if they used to. And finally, always aim for that harmony between mind and body.
And that leaves us with one final question. And this one's really just for you to think about. Take an honest look at your own practice. Are you working with your body, or are you kind of fighting against it? Is your practice in a state of true technical harmony? Because honestly, getting that answer right, well, it could change everything.